Typically, when vendors introduce changes to their pricing plans, it's a negative for consumers. Now you have additional costs you weren't prepared for, and it can be confusing to understand which plan you belong on. But that's not the case for Zapier, who announced some pricing changes today, which I think is going to be a net win for everybody involved. Hi, I'm Dan Lehman from AutomationHelpers.com, and we help businesses automate their processes and integrate their business applications. Zapier sent out an email and updated their socials, letting people know about these pricing changes, and there were 3 of them. The first one is that you can now build unlimited Zaps on free and starter plans. Now, in the past, you were limited to either 5 Zaps or 20 Zaps, respectively, depending on which of those plans you were on, which felt a little bit restrictive, especially if you were getting to know the application for the first time and you could only build those 5 Zaps. Kind of felt like, is it worth investing my time into this? Now you can go crazy. You can build as many Zaps as you want, and you're only charged, again, on those execution of the tasks themselves, not actually building the number of Zaps. The second change is paying per task when you go above your plan's limit. This is huge when it comes to managing predictability of costs. Now, in the past, there were 3 really negative things that would happen if you went over your limit. Number 1 would be you'd suddenly get a huge bill. You weren't aware it was coming, and you can imagine that would mean angry customers, and angry customers having to work with support with Zapier to understand their bill. Number 2, your Zaps could be shut off, and that could radically mess up your entire day in managing your business if suddenly your Zaps aren't firing. And number 3, if you were working with a consultant, some consultants tried to get around this by always downgrading and upgrading the plan, and that can be just plain confusing. So now if you go over your limits, you'll only be paying 1.25 times the cost of a task according to your subscription plan. Now, of course, if you have more tasks on your plan, that's going to lower your overall overage that you'll be paying per task. Now, this is the one feature that needs to be enabled by you in order to adopt this new pricing change. So if you go into your settings, go into billing and usage, and then you'll see a setting where you can go ahead and enable that pay per task over your plan limit. Now, this one you will want to think through. You might be a little bit wary of this because once you enable this feature, if you want to disable it, you have to go through support. It's kind of like working with a bank. When you don't have money in the bank, do you want them to put a stop on everything? Or do you want them to charge you that overdraft fee? This is the equivalent of having a small overdraft fee, which is reasonable for a lot of folks, but now it's outside of your control. So this is just one thing to think through before you enable it on your account. The third change is that the filter, formatter, and paths by Zapier no longer count as individual tasks. Now, this is huge for a lot of folks who are building more complex Zaps. This is something that when we're working with clients, we're always trying to measure, okay, how do we balance the pricing of this with the best way to do this thing architecturally? And now this makes it so we don't have to be always asking ourselves this question. I think it's much more reasonable in terms of the pricing model. Now let's do a little bit of quick analysis here. I think this is going to be a win for everybody involved, but I think it is good to analyze it because companies don't do things out of the goodness of their hearts. They do it because there is a strategic alignment. And it might be aligned with your own goals or it might not be aligned, but it's important to think through. In terms of the first change of having more Zaps, I think this is all about user activation. Now, when we talk about user activation in SaaS applications, there's tons of people who sign up for free trials and free plans, and they never actually get started with the application. There's something that's stopping them. I think user activation is an issue when you have people who start experimenting a little bit and then they face that blocker of, oh, I can only have my 5 Zaps here, and then they just disappear. In terms of the overages, I think this is all about predictability of spend. In today's economic climate, CFOs are looking for ways to get rid of subscriptions that aren't needed. And so having a subscription that, well, I don't know, this month it might cost this much, or this month it might cost this other amount, I think that can be really confusing, and that's not a good look for Zapier. So I think being more predictable is a strategic move to make sure that they are well aligned with their customers who are looking for ways to trim budget. And then in terms of the filter, formatter, and paths, I do think this is to keep customers happy. It's confusing why you would have to pay more to do just functional things inside of a workflow. I also think this could be driven by competitors who allow you to do many advanced things without much additional cost to it, and Zapier is looking at the overall landscape to reduce costs. Good job, Zapier. I think you're going to have lots of happy customers with these announcements. Now, if you have questions about Zapier or your own business automations, feel free to reach out to our website at automationhelpers.com, where we're offering free 30-minute consultations.